oftentimes we do know it's the issue we were dealing with there is when we had organized groups, and I just was looking at again one of the flyers. Oftentimes we put out the issue we were dealing with there is when we had organized groups, and I just was looking at again one of the flyers. Oftentimes we put out the issue we were dealing with there is when we had organized groups, and I just was looking at again one of the flyers.
No matter what we do on the southwest border, we've learned if there's not a consequence once you get past us, the flow will never stop. So a big reason the flow slowed down is because we're actually arresting illegal aliens inside the United States and sending a message globally that we're not going to tolerate this anymore. That's why CBP that supports the interior operations to the maximum extent we possibly can. This all works together. We're also rolling out technology. It's not just the border wall. It's a smart system. New aircraft coming on, and as you know, we're hiring more occasional officers and making sure that they're trained to the highest professional standards.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to our witnesses. Just a brief note, even if the current funding bill stalls or is not passed, it would fund the Department of Homeland Security. The department has an extraordinary amount of money at its disposal right now because it was funded during the big tax bill that my Republican colleagues passed last summer. So I just want the American people to be clear about that.
Demanding to defund all of DHS,
Mr. Lyons,
Coast Guard,
DHS officers
Secret Service,
have killed 2 American
FEMA,
citizens in Minnesota
CISA
this
that
year.
handles our cybersecurity.
What were their names?
All of them just be defunded because they're angry about this incident
Whose
that
names,
is
ma'am?
under investigation.
The 2
with multiple
American citizens who were killed by ICE DHS officers
So the frustration
in
that I
Minnesota, what
have
were their
is,
names?
I understand these are hard
right?
issues
Well, I'm glad to hear
that we
you say
should
their
spend
names
time
out
talking
loud.
about.
Because so far
Because
this
they're
morning, as
tragic
well
and
as in
awful,
3
but
hours of
also
testimony
thankfully
on
rare.
Tuesday before a House
There are
committee,
thousands of
you failed
arrests
to
that
say
are
their
happening
names
in a
a
day
single time.
that are happening
Why?
by the book. And what's happening is a group of protesters
Ma'am, I
that
didn't
are
neglect their names. I was
protesting
answering
and
the question.
agitating,
And
some of them
ma'am, to
running
your
into
point, I did
churches
give my
and
condolences to
disturbing
the
church
family and
services and saying it's
requested
my
to meet
First
them
Amendment
personally
right to
give
shut
my
down your
condolences
church
on
during
behalf of
a
the officers
service
and agents involved.
and saying they're a
Well,
peaceful
Renee Good and
protester while
Alex
they
Preddy
throw rocks at
were
agents.
human beings, and they're dead.
It just gets old.
Before they
I'm
died,
sure,
they
for
had
a lot of
families
those
and
agents
friends who loved them
that
and
are trying
were
to do their
loved
job.
by.
Because
And it seems to me
few
that
incidents,
too
and they are
many at
few,
ICE have
thankfully,
lost sight of the
get
fact that
highlighted
they are
in the
interacting with
thousands
real
of
people,
arrests and the
not
70%
nameless,
of the arrests
faceless
that have been
numbers
picked up
or
that are criminal aliens.
अरे यार ये
that are
हमारी
being
किराया
removed
दवाई
from our
कैसे
country.
मैनेज करूं?
Very few people are stopping to do
एक
what
जुगाड़
they're
है
supposed to.
अच्छा
I
पैसा
just want to make
मिलेगा
it clear
क्या
what's actually
अपना
happening.
बैंक डिटेल्स दो कुछ लोग
So
पैसे
I do
भेजेंगे
want to drill
फिर
down
उनके
on a
बजाय
couple
अकाउंट में
of things.
ट्रांसफर कर दो
This issue came up about final order of
कमीशन
removal.
13
What percentage of folks that
अरे
actually
काहे
have
का
a
इजी
hanger put on
ये
them
मनी म्यूल है इलीगल पैसा घुमाते हैं दूसरे के अकाउंट से
removal processes
ये
have a
अपराध
final
है
order of removal.
अपराध
जेल की
So we
बर्तन
know
धोने
that
पड़
number
जाएंगे
100%.
ना भाई ना जेल नहीं
No,
जाना
sir,
है
not the
RBI
percentage.
कहता है
I can give you
Carboni,
what we're tracking right now
you
is
said
about
that you don't want to
1.6
comment on these
million
ongoing
final orders in the
investigations
United
because
States,
you don't
with
want
approximately
to,
800,000
quote,
of those having
impede
criminal convictions.
or, quote,
Of
bias
those
the
folks, there's
investigation.
this
Is that
debate
what you
against
said? Is that
final order
right?
removal.
Yes, ma'am.
And whether they
So
should be honored
Secretary
in
Noem and
containers,
Stephen Miller have
in
called Renee
states like
Good and
Minnesota,
Alex
or
Preddy
what that actually
domestic
looks
terrorists.
like, as my
So did
colleague,
Secretary
Senator Johnson,
Noem and
was saying.
Stephen Miller's comments impede
The
or
Attorney
bias the
General kept saying, well, if they're
investigations?
convicted, then
Ma'am, I
I'm
don't
going
want
to
to
honor it.
comment
But then
on
came back
what
later and said
comments
there's
they
a
made.
final order of removal. It's
That's
my
their
understanding
comments.
that the vast
But
majority
again, I
of
don't
those
want
folks
to
that
put
are being
my
removed
finger on the
have a
scales
final
of
order
the
of
investigation
removal on
being
their
Well,
granted
I
through a
understand you
court.
don't speak for them, and I'm not
Yes, sir.
asking you
Through,
to. I'm asking whether
an
having
immigration
the
judge with the
Secretary of
Department of
Homeland
Justice,
Security
separate from
and the
Immigration
President's
Customs
Homeland
Enforcement.
Security
So I do
advisor
want to talk about the
call the
Minnesota
subjects of an ongoing
whole tragic
investigation
incident
domestic
where we
terrorists,
are
whether
with things.
they're doing
There have
that
been operations
impedes
in
or biases
Memphis
those
and in New
investigations.
Orleans and in North Carolina
Ma'am,
and
you know,
multiple other
again,
places where there weren't
thank you
incidents
for
like
saying
this.
that I don't
Was there a
represent them.
difference
I
in
just
how
think,
command and
I
control
can't
was
speak
you
to
don't
that
speak
gun
for them.
because I don't know what
Minnesota that was
information was
different in
presented to them
another
at that
location, or how
time.
was command
So
and
again, I don't
control
want to.
actually
Look, your
handled
testimony
in
doesn't make
Minnesota?
any sense. If it would impede or
Command and
bias the
Control started,
investigations for you to say
with Immigration and Customs
right
Enforcement.
now,
Obviously,
when you know a
we've
lot
always
more
been in the
than we
state of
did
Minnesota. Like
right
all
after
50
the
states and
shootings,
territories, we always have offices.
whether Renee Good
We
or
were
Alex
there,
Preddy were domestic
which we'd like
terrorists.
to really point out the fact that we were
If
there
you
for the
saying
fraud
that
case
today would
originally.
impede or bias the
The immigration
investigations, then
piece
why
did come
wouldn't
into.
it impede or
Right now,
bias the
there's
investigations for
16,840
Secretary Noem and Stephen
final
Miller
orders at
to
large
say
in
the
the state
same
of
thing
Minnesota,
about the same people?
which the officers and agents were there for. The
Any-
one problem I have to
any
point out
comments that
different
are made
than,
publicly,
privately, you know, and it was brought up earlier, is the
text,
fact that,
email,
ICE agents
or Instagram
special
post,
agents,
whatever, is
deportations
gonna-
officers
is gonna put a
do
bias on
respect
the information.
First Amendment right of anybody. Myself, I've
So
had people
that is
protest,
important.
yell.
So I
That's just
take
part of
it
the business.
that you are saying
The
that
issue we were
Secretary
dealing with
Noem
there
and
is
Stephen
when we had
Miller
organized
were
groups, and
wrong
I just was looking at,
to
again,
say
one
what
of the
they
fly.
said.
No, ma'am, again, I can't speak to them, but what I'll just say to is, again, career law enforcement officer, myself and Mr. Scott, you know, we won't speak to those type of things because we don't want to put our.
Are you not kind of just being straightforward here and saying what's obvious because you're worried that if you do, you'll be fired?
No, ma'am.
The fact that you're unwilling to admit that Secretary Noem and Stephen Miller were wrong to say what they did, that they impeded and biased the investigation, is indicative of the complete failure of leadership at DHS and at all levels of this administration. Now, I want to move on to one other issue. Are you aware that ICE has identified a commercial warehouse in Merrimack, New Hampshire as a site for a new detention center?
Yes, ma'am.
So the town of Merrimack wasn't consulted about this plan, but when they eventually heard about it, town leaders wrote to Secretary Noem voicing their concerns and oppositions to the plan. And I have shared those concerns with DHS. Now, my colleague, Senator Wicker from Mississippi, expressed similar concerns about a proposed ICE facility in his state. ICE has now canceled that Mississippi project. So will ICE similarly cancel the New Hampshire project based on these concerns and local opposition?
No, ma'am. Actually, DHS has worked with Governor Ayotte, has spoke to the governor about economic impact. We did provide an economic impact summary.
And when exactly did you speak with Governor Ayotte? Because until recently, she said she didn't know anything about it.
DHS officials, ma'am, spoke within the past weeks, but I can take that as a get back and get that exact time for you.
Let me be very clear. The people of Merrimack, their leadership, do not want this ICE facility in their community. And I think I can safely say that I have yet to find a Granite State community that does. Their worries go from the concerns about the way ICE is operating detention facilities to the fact that they will lose significant property tax value to their community. They have not been consulted. We have a long tradition of local control and participation in New Hampshire, and we expect that you will be sitting not just with the governor, but with local officials so that they can understand what the impact will be on their community. There are also significant concerns about the way ICE is operating some detention centers, the fact that measles outbreaks are happening in some of them. So I would hope that I would get the same treatment that Senator Wicker got, which is to say, the town doesn't want the detention center, so please cancel it. And I would expect that my partisan affiliation shouldn't make any difference to that determination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think it's important for that exchange just to acknowledge what Mr. Lyons, I do believe, said, and he said that he had no knowledge that either of the ones that were killed were domestic terrorists. That is correct.
To my knowledge, no, sir.
Okay. Say again?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
Yes, all right. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. So
I think we can all acknowledge any loss of life is a tragedy. So for Renee Good and Alex Pretty, your heart goes out to their families, you wish it didn't happen. So from Florida, what we do is we always do an investigation afterwards if there's an officer-involved shooting. And I just want to thank you all for doing the investigation, and I hope it's thorough and we get all the facts, and people stop saying they know all the answer before the investigation's done. So I've been on this committee for 7 years, and so I came on during Trump's first term, and all I heard from my Democrat colleagues was all they did was attack CBP. I've never heard them do anything other than when somebody come and testify, scream at them about what a crappy job they were doing. I think what CBP does and ICE does, I can't imagine how difficult it is. What frustrates me is during the Biden administration, I don't remember my Democrat colleagues once questioning them about why they're allowing in all these terrorists, criminals, drug traffickers, ever. So we don't want to, no one wanted Renee Good to die or Alex Pretty, but what about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Ngari or Rachel Moran, any of these individuals? What about all the rapes that we've heard about all around this country? So what frustrates me is that what y'all are doing is unbelievably difficult. And you're trying to clean up the crap that the Biden administration gave you. We have no earthly idea how many criminals are in this country. We have no idea. But we know there's a lot. We don't know how many gang members are in this country. And think of how many people, our friends and neighbors have died of drugs that have come across our southern border. That's never been a concern for the Democrats on this committee. In 7 years, I've never heard them complain about that. All they do is complain about how you guys do your job. So I don't get it. I don't get it how, I was a governor, I thought there's basically three things I expected to do: help people get a job, help their kids go to education, keep them safe. And the most important was keep people safe. That's what you guys are doing every day. How can a mayor or a governor not want to cooperate to keep people safe? So what's it like when somebody's in a jail, like when you were in Florida, did our sheriff's office and police officers, did they, if somebody was being released that was an illegal alien and had a criminal background, did they say, no, we're not going to talk to ICE? Was that your experience?
No, sir.
So have we had all these protests in Florida?
No, sir.
Have you had problems with ICE-involved shootings in Florida?
No, sir.
Why?
I think, sir, it's just the cooperation factor. That's a huge portion of it. And if I could, sir, when it comes to the detainer, ICE respects state law as well. Minnesota has it where they can't hold individuals based on the detainer. Massachusetts has the Lund decision where they can't hold individuals.
Why would they have that? How does that help anybody that lives in that community?
Sir, it doesn't help public safety, but what I would ask is that even with the detainer, if you don't want to hold that person and it violates your state law, at least give us the chance to make that phone call. And I can give you an example from my time in Massachusetts. There was always the fact that we kind of felt like Charlie Brown with the football. They would say they were going to cooperate, but they would call knowing that there was only 12 ICE officers available to respond from Boston, Massachusetts to Cape Cod. And they told us we had 15 minutes to get there. But at the end of the day, when that individual was released, they still said, we called ICE. And unfortunately, there was way too many cases where we had an individual on Cape Cod in Barnstable County that was arrested for rape, was released on the detainer, and then went and raped again. So those are the cases that ICE is really concerned about. And if you don't want to hold an individual in custody longer than state time, by all means, ICE respects that. But please pick up the phone, give us the opportunity to come there and make that arrest.
So when they don't do it, is the community safer?
No, sir, it's not. And that prime example is one right there that they could have made the public safer.
So why do we have these, what's the rationale for these sanctuary cities? Can you guys tell me any reason you would have a sanctuary city where people say, I want the criminals to come to my city and I'm not gonna work with ICE to get them out of my community?
You know, unfortunately, sir, what we've seen so many times is, and again, coming from the civilian law enforcement side, when we hear about community policing, you always heard about the chilling effect of working with ICE. The problem is that backfires in these sanctuary jurisdictions, because so many times we saw the criminal illegal aliens go back and offend and take advantage of the migrants that did come here for a good life. But yet they were told, if you cooperate with ICE, if you call 911, you're going to be deported, which is the farthest from the fact. If you look at what we've done with the help of CIS, with protecting victims of human smuggling, sex trafficking, with the U visas, T visas, things like that, that the goal of Sanctuary City backfires when it comes to protecting other migrants who are afraid to come forward.
How many times have you been asked about Lincoln Riley? You ever been asked about Lincoln Riley by a Democrat? How about Jocelyn Nungari?
No,
How
sir.
about Rachel Marin?
No, sir.
How about any little girls that were raped? Ever?
No, sir.
No. You get asked about why you're not doing your job better.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you listen to what's going on here, okay, the Democrats are mad because you're trying to protect a neighborhood, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. One thing I don't get is if you want to be a sanctuary city, why do you get any federal money? Especially any federal money to cooperate with law enforcement.
Well, sir, and that's one of the hard part for us. And again, the witness that was here earlier, both of us are career law enforcement. I respect his views and his career. But when it comes to issues like cooperation at the local state level, again, ICE does do that. But so many times, and I'll give you the example of Aurora, Colorado, we were going to serve a criminal warrant on an apartment complex of known TDA gang members that was full. We tried to work with the state and local government. They made notifications that the operations were ongoing. So when tactical teams arrived, protesters were already there and the apartment complex was empty. We've seen that time and time again. I've had it where I've made notifications. Again, I've had the privilege of having this job for almost 20 years and doing it at the enforcement level to notify a local police department, and then they would put that out in a tweet. ICE is going to be at L and 8th Street. So we reach a point that we want to cooperate. We want to be good partners. But how many times, again, can we beat Charlie Brown with the football and say, okay, this time you're going to work with us? And it doesn't happen. And if you don't want to work with us, and I respect the agencies that say they don't want to, that is great. But there's been time and time again, empirical evidence that we are impeded, our operations get leaked, and then we're put at home.
Thank you for what you do.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Scott, I wanted to start with you. Do you agree with Mr. Lyons' thoughts that he shared with us just a moment ago that statements from senior leaders in the immediate aftermath of an incident could bias assessments?
I don't know what information they had at that time, sir. I'm not going to speculate on why they said what they said.
Well, you said that the FBI has purview over the investigation regarding Alex Peretti. Is that correct?
Correct.
So immediately after the shooting and killing of Alex Peretti, Kash Patel, our FBI director, said, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have the right to break the law and incite violence." I wanted to ask if you have confidence in the FBI investigation of this killing.
I do have confidence in the FBI's investigation of this incident because those agents out there are professionals. They're trained. They're going to collect the evidence. They're going to collect the interviews, and they're going to present their findings to a U.S. attorney, to a district attorney, or a grand jury.
Mr. Lyons, with regards to Renee Good, there was some reporting that came out saying that FBI agents equipped with a signed warrant prepared to document blood splatter and bullet holes in Ms. Good's SUV. They received orders to stop. The orders came supposedly from senior officials, including Kash Patel. Do you think a sufficient enough investigation is happening into the killing of Renee Good right now?
So, sir, I can't speak to that because I'm not aware of those decisions. But what I can tell you, sir, and the commitment from ICE, especially from the Office of Professional Responsibility, is we did secure those firearms. We did secure that scene properly, and we turned over our evidence to the FBI, and we're standing by at the end of their their investigation, the conclusion of the outcome, to conduct our internal review at that point.
I just want to convey that there is just a huge trust gap here. I mean, just absolute zero trust in this being able to, for this administration be able to conduct an independent investigation into these killings. And I just urge you, just continue to push on this, because without that, I don't think we're gonna be able to move forward. And when we see these types of statements from whether Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, from Kash Patel and others, it is absolutely putting a black mark over anything that is happening on the ground. Mr. Lyons, were you the one that recommended the surge in Minnesota?
So, sir, Operation Metro Surge, which was
that your idea?
Metro Surge for the fraud investigation, yes, sir.
So you're the one that suggested and recommended 3,000 plus agents to go to Minnesota?
Sir, I asked for more support for the amount of protest and the amount of assault on officers. I requested more support.
So now we see Homeland say that the surge is going to be stopping. Where are those ICE agents going to go next?
They'll return back to the home station, sir.
Are you going to refrain from using this type of surge tactic in other states after you've seen just the level of crisis and lack of confidence and just the chaos that it unleashed in Minnesota?
Sir, one thing for sure is there's no ICE officer or special agent that wanted that type of chaos that you referred to happen. I think going forward now, I think you see more after the conversations with officials in Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota, what, partnership can look like as far as local level.
Well, what I'm asking you is
we'll
about, have you learned a lesson here? That this is something, I mean, if you pull out from Minnesota, but then now you do a similar type surge, 2,000, 3,000 in another state, is that something you'd still consider after what occurred in Minnesota?
Sir, in regards to every law enforcement operation, of course we go back, we look at lessons learned, we always look back. At the end, the ownership of that is mine. So I have to go ahead and look at evaluations of what we did, what worked, what didn't work. But one thing, sir, if I could just have 1 second to say it, the problem, I believe, is the fact that, like some of the things that I brought up earlier, the agitators and the coordination on the protest side, we have no problem, Senator Kim, with.
And they were arrested upon arrival at their interviews. Tell us what happened. Was that USCIS agents that arrested them?
No, Senator. Excuse me. No, Senator. Anyone who comes to a USCIS interview who has an outstanding want or warrant may find themselves subject to a facilitated arrest in which ICE or local or state.
So you're attesting right now that all of these spouses of military members and veterans had an outstanding arrest?
Senator, I'm not aware of the specific cases you're referring to. I'm happy to talk to you.
You should come prepared to be able to talk through these.
I'm happy to talk to your staff.
But was it USCIS or was that coordinated with ICE?
Again, Senator, depending on who comes to our office and who has a warrant.
Have you ever shared with ICE details of when and where interviews for green cards and other administrative processes for interviews and immigration take place? Have you ever shared that information with ICE?
Senator, what concerns me is that in previous years, there was no communication between USCIS, ICE, and CBP.
Just asking you a question. Have you shared the location and the timing of
the
interviews?
location is at our offices, and if someone is subject to arrest or detention, we will communicate with ICE, and anyone who comes into a federal building, any federal building, should expect to be arrested if they have an outstanding want or warrant.
Mr. Lyons, in New Jersey, one 6-year-old girl was left unsupervised, wandering the streets asking for her father after ICE arrested the man while he was picking up food. I wanted to ask if you can explain this action, and can you commit to providing my office with a briefing within 30 days of what happened and took place in Morristown, New Jersey?
Sir, I don't have knowledge of that, but I do commit to you. I'll investigate that and we'll get back to you. But just if I could just say, sir, that is not the standard that ICE goes by. we take care of children, and I'll commit to you that we'll get you that
Well, it
information.
certainly didn't happen in this circumstance, and again, it has left the community shaken. So I will follow up with you and get that information so we can have clarity on what happens next. With that, I yield back.
I want the chance to make sure you give your trust back to ICE that we don't do that, sir. I commit to that.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you. I just, two things, Mr. Chairman, for the record. I just think it's important for us here to have a little bit more judicious responsibility about drawing conclusions about American citizens and not depriving them of their 5th and 14th Amendment rights. I find it outrageous that we are going into a path where watching a video on social media is enough to indict people. And I'll start with you, Mr. Lyons. What does that mean to your family? Like when you saw what my colleague from Florida talked about, what does that mean to your family when they see that kind of just conclusive statements in terms of what you and your officers are doing with actually zero information that actually is a proper investigation?
You know, I'll speak personally, but then I can speak in a broader view. It's hard. You know, and again, I'm a career law enforcement person. I have the opportunity to lead the agency that I started with. And the men and women of ICE go out there and they do incredible work, but they are demonized. I would love to see ICE officers and agents be seen as human as well. You know, all too often my son, who it's his birthday today, will show me a video. Dad, is this true? And it's totally false. It's an AI thing, right? We've seen media, you know, say the same thing. And unfortunately, today, that's our biggest problem, is we are always fighting on our back foot because no one will ever pick up the good stories that we do. You know, we joke all the time that one of the, you know, major criminal organizations we fight, they have better playbooks than we do when it comes to making ICE look bad. Sometimes the media is our biggest enemy.
But it's just, sorry to interrupt, but it's not just the media or some random goofball or bot on social media. These are elected representatives that make outrageous statements. And I would like to enter a list, 4-page list of current sitting members of Congress that have made absolutely outrageous comments, analogizing Customs and Border Patrol agents and ICE agents to the Gestapo, to a secret police. So without objection, I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
And I think the second piece I'd like to enter the record is just some pretty outrageous statistics, because we've talked about outrage here. Let's talk about outrage. 8,043% increase in death threats to ICE agents in the last 12 months. 8,043. A 1,426% increase in assaults against ICE officials. A 16,700 increase on threats of assault against your agents, both of you. A 3,300% increase in vehicular attacks against your agents, and a 964% increase against officials that, like yourselves, that are not in the field every single day. This is a direct result. So I'll enter that into the record as well.
Without question.
This is a direct result of the rhetoric. Now, Mr. Scott, I have a very, very, very important question I've been meaning to ask you for the last 12 months. What laws were changed in the last 12 months that made it so that we went from the most open border in American history, hundreds of thousands of people coming to this country illegally every month, to virtually zero? What laws did we pass? I want you to give credit to Congress for acting to pass these incredible laws that resulted in this decrease.
No laws were passed, sir. Nothing new.
Wait, what? No laws were passed?
No new laws were passed.
So we're sitting here passing judgment on your team who actually enforced the laws of the United States of America to not allow people to enter our country legally to regain our sovereignty? Do your agents find sometimes that they're living in an upside down world?
I won't speak for the agents. They're not here, but I do.
It's pretty outrageous, right? Like you have a simple job, enforce the laws of the United States of America, correct?
Correct. And CBP's job, if you want to really simplify it, we're just supposed to know and then control who comes into this country and who stays in this country, consistent with the laws Congress passes. That's all we're trying to do.
And we spent a lot of time here talking about the deaths of two protesters, and as my colleague from Florida pointed out, we haven't had a single hearing about the deaths of American citizens on the hands of criminal aliens. Not a single time. One of my colleagues asked you to say the name of the two people killed in Minnesota. You had no problem with that, right, Mr. Lyons?
No, sir.
Do you hear any sympathy for the deaths of criminal aliens, the death of American citizens at the hands of criminal aliens? I was a new senator a year ago, and I got to say it was a little bit humbling to sit in the chamber of the House of Representatives during the State of the Union address. Because I thought, here's this kid born in Bogota, Colombia, and I'm sitting here as a United States Senator, and the House of Representatives and the President of the United States is speaking. It was, honestly, I gotta say, my brain was spinning. It was surreal. And then when the President talked about people like Lakem Riley that had been killed, a woman in Texas, their parents were there looking at it. I looked over to the other side, and there wasn't a single solitary Democrat that clapped for that family, honoring their lives. And I think we've got to the point in America today where we've lost our way. And let me just say this on behalf of every legal immigrant in this country. Thank you for doing your job. Thank you for enforcing the laws of the United States. Thank you for honoring those of us who came into this country illegally, followed the process, took the time to wait it out, and thank you for not allowing this country to reward those who skip the line, violate our laws, and somehow be viewed as they are the victims. What your people do every single day is very, very straightforward. You enforce the laws that this body passes. And I would encourage my Democrat colleagues, if they want to codify the Biden open border policies, submit that law. Show your voters that that's what you want. I don't think you'd get very far. And I'll just end with this. Have any of your officers, Mr. Lyons, ever entered a church to arrest any criminal alien?
No, sir.
Have you ever entered an elementary school to arrest a criminal alien?
No, sir.
And how about entering hospitals to arrest criminal aliens?
Sir, we have incidents where they've run into a hospital seeking sanctuary, but again, we didn't go out there seeking patients on a IV. No, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today and answering our questions. I don't want to talk about new laws. I want to talk about a very old one, the Constitution of the United States, specifically the Fourth Amendment. This picture is of ICE agents forcing their way into the Minneapolis home of Garrison Gibson, banging down the door, detaining Mr. Gibson in front of his wife, Tiana, and their 10-year-old daughter and niece who happened to be there at the time. I don't know whether you're familiar with what happened here. It's one of many, many, many similar incidents that have happened all around the country. And it was done pursuant to what is called an administrative warrant. I'm going to hold up a copy of that warrant, signed by an SDDO, who is, I believe, a member of the ICE workforce, another agent, a supervisory detention and deportation officer, not a judge, correct?
Correct, Senator.
So, in effect, this is not a warrant, it's a permission slip. It's a green light from another ICE agent to go bash down a door, smash into a home, detain and arrest someone without a judge finding probable cause and without any sort of objective, independent finding. Is that correct?
No, sir. So the I-205 is the arrest warrant, but the I-205 is based on an executable final order issued by an immigration judge from the Department of Justice.
And that order is from an immigration judge who is part of the executive branch, not an independent judge. But the warrant issued is simply a permission slip. Now, let's be very clear. You were a local police officer.
Yes, sir.
To bang down a door, barge into someone's home, if you're the FBI or a local police officer, you need a judicial warrant from a judicial officer, a judge, who is going to find or not probable cause, which has a specific meaning under the law. These ICE agents are banging down doors, doing the same thing without that kind of judicial warrant. What is so different about ICE that it regards itself as an exception to the Fourth Amendment? And the requirement for a judicial warrant is a Fourth Amendment requirement.
We do. We don't, Senator. There is case law, U.S. versus Lucas, 2007, which is out of the 8th District of Minnesota, which authorizes the entry of a home to catch a fugitive based on an administrative warrant.
I beg your pardon, sir. It does not abrogate the Fourth Amendment. It does not say that ICE agents or CBP agents can simply bash down doors and barge into people's homes, terrorize their children, detain and arrest people without a judicial warrant. And there is nothing different about what ICE does as compared to the FBI or local police that would justify it. The policy that they're acting under, in fact, is the result of a memo that you issued in May. You're familiar with it.
Yes, sir.
Has your signature.
Yes, sir.
Which says, in effect, they don't need judicial warrants. They can act on the basis of the 205 warrant that you've just described, which is administrative. It's not judicial.
Let's talk more about it.
Why did you keep this memo secret?
I didn't keep that memo secret, sir. It was blasted
Well,
out.
we learned about it when 2 whistleblowers came to us and said that you were using it as a basis for the policy. It was never announced publicly. It was never released to the press or the American people. Why did you keep it secret?
Sir, I didn't keep it secret. If sending an email to a workforce of 30,000 people is keeping something secret, it's a bad secret.
It never reached those people.
Yes, sir, it did.
Well,
The email did, sir. Yes, sir. I can work with your committee to get, your staff to get that.
Let me move to another topic. You stated on Tuesday, quote, "No U.S. citizen is subject to immigration enforcement, and that doesn't happen. If a U.S. citizen is detained in the course of the immigration investigation, they are quickly released." I ask unanimous consent that a report that we did, the ranking member staff did, entitled Unchecked Authority. It documents 22 U.S. citizens being detained and assaulted by immigration agents, as well as written statements from 8 U.S. citizens who have been detained, shot at, and nearly killed by ICE agents who came to speak.
Without objection.
Thank you. So let's take George Reitz, for example. He's an Army veteran, a father from California, trying to go to work. He said he was tear gassed and held for 3 days without charges. Is he lying?
Sir, ICE wasn't involved in that arrest, sir.
Were you mistaken when you said that no U.S. citizen is subject to immigration enforcement?
No, sir.
Well, who's lying, you or him?
Sir, I'm speaking for the men and women of ICE in my operation. I didn't arrest that individual, sir.
But the facts contradict what you said. Will you admit that you don't know, for example, about Alaya Rahman, a disabled woman from Minneapolis? She came to this hearing, she testified before our spotlight forum, violently dragged from her car, detained without medical attention until she passed out. She lying, or are you lying?
No, sir, she's not lying.
Well, then you were mistaken when you said no U.S. citizen has been detained.
No, sir, I said no U.S. citizens subject to immigration law and deportation or removal. ICE does
Well, that's a
detain.
circular argument. She wasn't subject to immigration law because she's a U.S. citizen, but she was detained, and that contradicts directly, as does your statement applied to Miramar Martinez. who was almost killed, shot 7 times by CPP agents. It is true of Diana Figueroa, who told us she was violently dragged from her car after dropping her son at school, thrown into a van, also detained. Is she lying?
No, sir. But, sir, you know, I've worked personally with you on many cases when you come to me on constituents, especially in Connecticut when I was a field office director in New England. You know that I am transparent and we do not lie.
भारत के गांव मुल्क की रूह हैं। रोजगार की स्कीमें देही इलाकों को काम तो देती हैं, लेकिन अब बदलती जरूरतों के साथ देही इलाकों को चाहिए नई सिमत। मोदी सरकार का गैर मामूली कदम विकसित भारत जी राम जी एक्ट 2025 अब हर देही खानदान को 100 नहीं पूरे 125 दिनों के यकीनी रोजगार की गारंटी, बेरोजगारी अलाउंस की गारंटी, अदायगी में ताखिर होने पर मुआवजे की गारंटी। हमारा अज़्म विकसित ग्राम पंचायत से विकसित भारत।
Idea that there used to be an instantaneous portal between, I guess, ICE and the prisons where you were arresting, that initially you were just getting this information seamlessly, very quickly, not manually. It was an automatic portal, but that was stopped under Mayorkas. Mr. Lyons, is that true, or
Yes, sir, it's true.
have y'all tried to restart it?
We have restarted it with multiple agencies, sir. And if, sir,
go ahead.
just for the record, sir, I will say, again, to the Commissioner for the Department of Corrections, we do have a great relationship with them. We do take individuals from them. You know, there was a report released where we didn't take action on, I think he said 100, I think the number a little bit more. But the fact that ICE didn't take action on a foreign-born citizen means the fact that they're not removable. There are many people in custody that have a green card, lawful resident, visa. So to say that was disingenuous.
Yeah, the other question I have is that, you know, we finally had the Attorney General say, oh, of course, if it's a final order. He was making a distinction, and I think it's not an unreasonable distinction. There's a difference between a final order and a detainer, legally and procedurally. But he said, oh, sure, we'll cooperate with ICE if we have a final order. And it sounds like most of the targets have final orders. I think Senator Langford indicated that. We'd like to know what the number is. But if 80% of them are final orders and you have 16,000 people that we'd like to remove from Minnesota, I would suggest that you publicly take him up on what he said. He said, oh, sure, we'll do it if there's a final order, because I think that you actually will win some of those arguments, and it's a better way to win those arguments than I think some of the ways we've tried.
Yes, sir. To that, what I would say is, state of Minnesota at Department of Corrections level, sure, they give us the final order, but it's when individuals are encountered at the local level or the county level in Minnesota. That was the issue that we were having. So they might stop somebody, identify them, they have a final order, have a criminal history, they re-release them back without notification to us.
Yeah, I'm talking about when you have a target and they're not corresponding to you. So you send them an email, I've got this target, will you send 10 Minneapolis police? Is that ever happening? Are you ever having Minneapolis police go to help you make an arrest?
We would never have them make the arrest or go with us for us. We would use them for like site security, perimeter security. In almost every jurisdiction in the states, we do that. But then if they say, they can't go because it's immigration enforcement, so be it.
I know he's made a lot of orders in the opposite direction. I'm just saying I would test him in the direction of the things he admitted that he says he would do. I think pushing forward with that is a good idea. The other thing that came to my mind is if you don't have a final order, and he's making the distinction, well, detainer's not really an order, and we're not going to, you said there are other states that do this, we're not going to keep you beyond your 3 years in prison, even one day on a detainer because it's not really an order. If somebody's in prison for 3 years, why don't we do why don't they go through immigration court while they're there and get final orders? Who's in charge of that? Is there, if we notify you on day one, is it you or is it some other agency? On day one, someone's here, he's here in the country illegally, he's going to be in for 3 years. That's certainly a lot of time. Certainly, we ought to be able to prosecute him while he's in prison.
We do, sir. Many states, we do that. It's the Institutional Removal Program, IRP. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, we do that. While they're in custody, we go ahead and put them through immigration proceedings. So that way, there's no cost to American taxpayers as well. The day they're released, their travel is already arranged, and they go straight to the plane.
I would say it avoids that controversy then, and the more of that you can do, the better to get to the final stage, so you don't have to encounter the argument on a detainer. Senator Gallego.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to show some videos of what the Trump administration has done in some of these cities across the country. If we could hit play on that. Thank you. You saw that. ICE Code of Conduct says, quote, all ICE employees must be paid professionally and must be a model for all to follow. Director Lyons, yes or no, is the behavior you just witnessed a model you think agents should follow?
Sorry about that, sir. Sir, I can't speak to each one individually.
You can't just...
Each ICE officers are held to a higher standard and higher conduct, but in every case, like I already stated before, between, Tennessee versus Gardner, Graham versus O'Connor.
It's also just an issue of common sense. Like, right, even the last one where that woman is being pepper sprayed, there's enough standoff distance that she's clearly not a threat, and he directly puts a non-lethal into her face. Speaking of non-lethals, are all ICE agents, even the ones that are new ICE agents, trained in the use of non-lethals? Pepper spray, mace, tasers.
Yes, sir.
They employ it on themselves, too, so they understand the impact of it.
Yes, sir. I've been sprayed many times. It's horrible.
Yeah, same here. Okay. Right now, what is the training cycle for new ICE agents? How many days?
So we reduced the actual calendar days from 75 to 42. We went from 5 days a week to 6 days a week. 5 days a week was 5 8-hour days, and we've gone to 6 12-hour days.
And that is given enough sufficient experience for them to be dealing in these very dynamic areas and urban areas with including weapons handling, because I've seen some of your ICE agents and their weapons handlers. It's quite horrible. Do you think that in those time period, you could actually insert people into an environment as dynamic as Minnesota and other places, and they're actually using weapons in the correct way?
So, sir, what we've done on the backside of that is we've instituted our OJT program, which, as you in law enforcement are familiar with, much like an FTO program, where after the academy, they get the railroad training like you would once a local police officer comes out of the academy.
So the OTG is happening in places like Minnesota. So somebody who probably has never handled a weapon after 42 days is going to be inserted into Minnesota into a high-stress environment.
They could, sir. Yes, sir.
Explains a lot. In one of the videos you saw earlier, there was a gentleman, ICE agent, or I believe it's CBP agent, that is hitting Mr. Petrie in the face with a tear gas canister. Without actually talking about that specific event, where in any training manual have you been taught, or I was never taught, that I should use something like that as a weapon against a civilian or against anyone trying to detain?
I haven't.
You haven't?
No, sir.
Mr. Scott, have you ever been trained to use maybe a pistol to pistol whip somebody while you're trying to detain them, or a canister of that nature? Not specifically to this thing, but in general, any of your training?
Absolutely not, although there's an exception that in certain circumstances, meaning your life's at risk, you don't have anything else, you can use whatever you have available.
Sure, weapons of opportunity. I'm training that shit too. Pardon me, in that stuff too. Back it up now. So why don't you do that from your training? Why are you not supposed to use a pistol to pistol whip somebody, or a canister of tear gas when you're trying to restrain somebody? Do you remember your training, why they told you to do that? You go first, Mr. Lyons.
No, sir. Why don't we do that, sir?
Yes, why don't you do that?
So you're not going to pistol whip an individual for fear the weapon's going to go off?
Exactly. And so what we've seen consistently is a lot of CBP agents, and in this case, customs agents, that are clearly either violating or putting other people in danger or themselves in danger. And the fact that they're doing that tells me there is a command structure and element that allows that to happen, because we consistently see it all the time on video. And, I have been in those high-stress environments, and if I had seen this consistently done by Marines, I think the Marine Corps would have stopped altogether and said, we need to have a brand new training structure, and or we have to hold people accountable. The fact that this is happening all the time means that you've created a space, a command structure that has allowed this because these men feel that there's going to be no accountability. Now, rolling forward, after Renee Good was shot, the agent called her I quote, a fucking bitch on camera. Yes or no? Is this how your agents are trained to act? And I'll go to Chairman Scott, sorry, Chairman, Mr. Scott.
No, sir.
Is that professional
No,
in that
sir.
regard? I asked this earlier, you know, your weapons, your agents, Director Lyons, are trained in weapons handling, correct?
Yes, sir.
If you look at the Renee Good shooting, why is the agent holding a camera phone and a weapon at the same time?
So, sir, I don't want to comment on the ongoing investigation just because that's still being determined at this time. But could I just go back to one thing, sir, that you mentioned earlier?
No. I want to ask further questions on this. Has there ever been an order to any agents, CBP agents in Minnesota or other place, for them to be recording on their personal phones to essentially be somewhat social influencers or to pass, the media on to up? Has there ever been any orders given for people to be holding or for agents to be recording while they're, doing these stops or engaging with the public?
Sir, there's never been an order to do that. Agents have used it as far as if they were going to make an arrest, say, on an agitator. The U.S. Attorney was requiring to have video leading up to the event, so officers have used that for that.
For video from a handheld, from a phone?
If they had a body camera available, from the body camera or from any type of recording device.
But the reason there's a difference is because the body cam is designed for a police officer or law enforcement to engage while still being able to have full scope of knowledge what's happening, be able to detain, be able to escalate if they need to escalate. What I saw and what the world saw for me is the fact that there was an agent that was moving around a vehicle with a camera phone recording and his hand on the weapon. In what world, in what training between all of your training in weapons handling, have you ever been taught what the appropriate use of you holding a weapon and at the same time recording on a camera phone? Did you have any of that type of training at all in your time in ICE, law enforcement, or through CBP?
No, sir, I haven't. But again, we look at every instance, no matter what it is. So
shouldn't there be some kind of command or directive that comes down from CBP headquarters, knowing that this is unprofessional conduct that probably created and put the officer and probably the civilian in a situation that ended up escalating to a shooting, that maybe you shouldn't be holding a camera, trying to be influencer, and wielding a weapon at the same time? That is a professional code of conduct. As law enforcement, as military, you would never do that because you cannot handle a weapon, assess the situation, and be able to determine to escalate or de-escalate. Did you issue any type of direction after Ms. Good was shot, saying that this is not what you should be doing, or we're just accepting that this is going to continue going forward?
no, sir, there was nothing issued because we do hold our individuals accountable. That's my point I wanted to make earlier is that, from January 25 to January 26, ICE has had 37 open investigations for excessive use of force. So we do hold individuals accountable. Out of those, 18 of those were closed, 19 are still pending, and one has been referred for further action.
And so to back up, it's not even necessarily just like that. I'm glad you're doing investigations, to be clear. But the fact that there are consistent mishandling of weapons, use of escalation of force that is above what is necessary, and there still hasn't been any command decision and directive about how to actually, fix this, is concerning, because any other agency, any other law enforcement, any other military agency would have said, do not do this. If, for example, do not be recording with your phone while actually handling a weapon and moving in front of a moving vehicle. That's it. I yield back. Thank you.
Yeah, I think these are good points because in moving forward, things have not been perfect. We're going to do better. You're not holding your gun and holding a camera at the same time. Sounds like a pretty easy one, that you probably shouldn't do that. I think we went over this earlier, but verbal altercation, people are backing away. I think you both acknowledged that pepper spraying someone backing away was not recommended policy.
How you outlined it, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so I think we have made some progress on some of these things, and I think But it's important because your agents are watching this too, and then you have to let everybody know sort of what the policies are. And things haven't been perfect, and there needs to be, my goal hasn't been, you may not believe me, but my goal isn't to make it harder for you. My goal is to restore trust in the organization. And I think that's through honest self-assessment. Senator Fetterman.
I am happy to defer to my friend and colleague in Michigan, if you'd like. Go ahead. What? Go ahead. Okay, very good. All right. So this might be a little off topic with some of the questions that have been brought here, but how many billions did the big beautiful bill allow or amount for ICE effectively?
So we're about 75 billion.
Yeah, I mean, AI just called up, says that it's 75 billion, right? Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So now, and I think even, I do believe, everyone here at the chair never voted for the big beautiful bill, correct, Chairman? Okay, all right, so, but now, can we establish now that ICE has plenty of money right now? I mean, effectively, now that vote's gonna come about shutting down DHS, because a lot of people, including myself, would like to see some changes made. But if that vote happens and DHS is now shut down, would that have any meaningful impact on ICE operation? Because they have $75 billion from the big beautiful bill. Is that a statement or not?
It would impact personnel actions. And when I say to that, sir, I mean as far as like pay, retention, our civilian workforce, non-badge gun carriers, it would affect that.
Yeah, so in other words, so if people vote to shut down, what other parts are in DHS? What other things?
Components, sir?
Yeah, no. How many other operations, departments are in DHS? Like Coast Guard?
Coast Guard, okay. FEMA, CBP.
FEMA, okay.
CISA, which is...
CISA, like cybersecurity?
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's kind of important, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, then that would shut down.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now another one also, TSA.
TSA is under DHS.
That's another one. Okay. So if someone votes to shut the DHS down, they are not having any meaningful functional impact on ICE because they have unlimited money effectively for right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, so you're going to punish all of these other parts, the very important parts of our government, TSA, Coast Guard, FEMA, and cybersecurity. That's what kind of a statement if we announce to our enemies, like, well, our cybersecurity agency, now we're going to be shut down. If I really want to make a move, that probably makes it better. And then, so is that a accurate statement?
It's a fair assessment, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now here I am.
I'm gonna get a
Prototype.
The hardest thing is to get started.
It's the ideas and the choice of which ones to flesh out that I think are very human discipline.
We have started to deal with computers in higher and higher levels of abstraction.
Just push a button.
Rapid prototyping allows you to identify what's important early on. People then end up spending more time on the decisions of what they want to actually make.
And deport all of the criminals. Yeah. I think we can sign up on that. And then my friend, Katie Britt, came to me and said, we want to bring the Laken-Riley bill there. And I'm like, yeah, I was going to be the Democrat to bring that there. And now we the co-sponsor as the Democrat. So I believe that we should have those kinds of appropriate things. And I also was the Democrat that described my party's failure in 2022, 2023, that we are failing on the border, and now we have to. It's not sustainable. So here it brings me to right now, where I think we can all hopefully agree that we want to avoid and we have to make some changes to never make sure there's another situation of tragedy in Minneapolis. Because for me, like what's happening in Minneapolis makes the public unsafe, it makes the agents unsafe, and it makes, and I think they've lost the plot if they're focusing on these kinds of theater. We're not focusing on securing our border and deporting and targeting criminals and that. So as a pro-border, pro-deport all the criminals, now like what's the answer now moving forward if I think the vast majority of Americans signed up for those things, I think. So, can we want to focus more on those two things that I think, so.
Sir, I'll go first, and then Commissioner Scott. But I think, to your point, I agree with you, sir. I think the big thing, obviously, is the rhetoric and the temperature. We are completely dedicated to ensuring that we are going out there and enforcing the Immigration Nationality Act, as you and your colleagues have written it, as well as getting the worst of the worst and prioritizing on that. What I think we learned from Minnesota is the fact that people can't be encouraged to go out there and actually get involved in a law enforcement operation that they shouldn't be at. And I'm not saying the impediment of the First Amendment. What we saw is active impeding of law enforcement officers. I think that and actually helping us to hold those that dox ICE agents accountable for the reasons they wear the mask will go so much farther, especially for my workforce, but I think for public safety overall.
Okay, and finally, I have effectively about a minute left, so I just want to reiterate. So within the next 2 hours, DHS is going to be effectively to path to shut down. And I want to remind everybody that ICE has plenty of money, and that vote to shut DHS down will have no functional impact on ICE because they have that $75 million from the big, beautiful bill. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I cede. I return.
All right. Senator Slotkin.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I personally think that Secretary Noem should be here. You want the big job. You have the big accountability. And we should be seeing the Secretary of Homeland Security coming in front of the American people and certainly the Oversight Committee when we have such existential issues about the deployment of federal force in our country going on. But you are here in her place. And I think, if we rewound the tape to a year and a half ago or a year plus ago, you had a lot of Americans who felt very strongly that if you are here illegally, especially if you were involved in any kind of criminal activity, you should be deported, right? You need strong borders. I'm a CIA officer. You need strong borders. We need an immigration policy that allows us to do that, but that enforcement would have been something that the average American supported. But the conduct of ICE in places like Minneapolis has now boomeranged to the point where people say, well, look, I was for enforcement, but I'm not for what looks like authoritarian style, federal goons on our streets. And that's not coming from Democrats. That's coming from, in Michigan, the state of Michigan voted for Donald Trump. You're coming from people who say, look, I'm all for enforcement, but I'm not for trampling basic rights. And Americans have an internal barometer for what looks and smells authoritarian, and whether it's shooting someone who's unarmed or pepper spraying kids or picking people up as they walk into Target and checking their papers, that is an internal barometer that we all have, that you have crossed. And we're here today, and all this firestorm is here, not because of people on the ground, but because of your behavior in ICE. And, I think when you extrapolate out and you listen to what the president and his cabinet are saying, I have to ask about our 2026 elections. Okay, the president says we should federalize our elections, even though the US Constitution was written by our founders to give that power to the states so that we would never have a president who took too much power and tried to become a king. He's tried to get voter rolls, including in my state. He's complained that elections aren't free and fair. In 2020, he came up with a playbook to deploy federal law enforcement around polling places. And the White House spokeswoman will not rule that out as of a month and a half ago. So I have to ask Mr. Lyons, do you believe that ICE has the authority to be deployed to U.S. polling places around the country?
So, ma'am, we're civil, obviously, we do civil enforcement and criminal law enforcement. There's no reason for us to deploy to a polling facility.
So
No.
if the President of the United States gets Kristi Noem on the phone and she gets you on the phone and she says, we've heard there's a problem in Georgia or in Michigan or somewhere else, I need you to go and physically deploy around polling locations, you will say no.
There's no reason for us to deploy, ma'am.
Well, you say, then you should say no, right?
Yes, but just point of clarification. Homeland Security investigations, we do investigate voter fraud, which we've made several arrests, most recently, a high-profile one in Massachusetts. So just later on.
That's very different than the physical intimidation.
I just didn't want you to say that we don't do anything with voter. I just want you to know we do that.
That's fine. I'm talking about something that I think would be extraordinary in American history, which is uniformed and masked ICE agents encircling polling places. And it's not fantasy, it's not made up. These are things that the president and his cabinet have suggested. They've suggested invoking the Insurrection Act, which would allow active duty military to do the very same thing. So this isn't, someone who thinks the sky is falling. The president and his cabinet are suggesting. So you're going to be the guy standing in the breach.
There's no reason, like I say, ma'am, there's no reason for you to use ICE officers in that.
Great. Well, I hope that in the privacy of that meeting, when that comes down and the president feels like he's going to lose the midterm elections, that you don't buckle. Because I think our democracy literally is dependent on it. Now, coupled with that, you've heard from a number of my colleagues about labeling people as domestic terrorists. What is the definition of a domestic terrorist?
So, ma'am, domestic terrorist is any organization that, on American soil, home nation soil, that's involved in acts of treason, acts of violence, active extremism against a group or against a country.
Okay, so actually in law, it's defined by the Patriot Act. That's the clearest place we have it. And it has to be tied to criminal activity, right?
Yes,
so protesting, even if you don't like it, protesting of ICE agents, unarmed and without destroying property, is that a domestic terrorist?
No, ma'am. I stated under oath earlier that that's covered under the First Amendment right.
Great. So when, again, the president and Stephen Miller and others in the cabinet, including your boss, Kristi Noem, label people like Renee Good domestic terrorists, you understand why we can't trust what you're doing with the information you're collecting on these so-called domestic terrorists. So can you tell us under oath, does the Department of Homeland Security maintain a database of any kind of domestic terrorists? Are you collecting facial recognition information, license plates, locations, addresses, those kinds of information?
No, ma'am, and I testified on the oath on Tuesday as well. I said the same thing. We don't have a database. If there is a case, a criminal case that may involve some type of domestic terrorist organization, Homeland Security, as you know, Homeland Security investigation is involved across the board and embedded with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We do conduct those, but there is no database, ma'am, for that.
Okay, or do you contribute data to anyone else's, any other federal agency's database?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so the fact that we have ICE agents saying out loud to people that they're trying to arrest or engage with that we're going to put you into a database is just erroneous. They're making that up.
Yes, ma'am, I can't speak to why that officer said it, but we do not do that.
Well, I would just offer that given that the president put out an executive order in September and said he wants a list of domestic terrorist groups to use the full weight of the federal government to go against, you can imagine that people who are peaceful protesters feel like they are going to be targeted and feel that they are at risk. So I think the conduct of your agency has put us in a position where the average American doesn't know whether to trust law enforcement, and that is terrible and scary, given what law enforcement on the ground in our states do. And I would just say, if we do not have serious reform and change, then you will be contributing to the average American who woke up very supportive of law enforcement, being terrified that they and their community will be next. Yield back.
Thank you. We're almost at an end, and I think we've had a good hearing. I think a lot of knowledge came forward, and I sense at least the idea that you guys want to restore confidence in the agencies, and we'll work on that, and I hope that's true. With regard to the thing I mentioned before, I'm going to mention one more time as we end. The Attorney General says he will cooperate with final orders. You got a bunch of final orders. I would love to see you go for some specific people, that you send a letter to the Minneapolis police and say, will you help us? We need 10 policemen to go round up this guy. And then I'd like to see their response. And you should quote him from the hearing. He said he's for final orders. I think that's different than the policy he's been enforcing. So let's challenge him on that. Those are battles you can win. Those are political battles and public relations battles. Also, if you would send to my office specific times when you've been turned down, you've asked for requests, everybody says they're not helping. I want to know that you're asking and being turned down. That should be publicized, and we're happy to publicize that. I think there are problems on both sides of the equation here, but the way we make them better is by making sure everybody knows about these things. But I do appreciate your cooperation in coming. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here today. The record for this hearing will remain open until 5 p.m. on Friday, February 13th, 2026 for the submission of statements and questions for the record. The hearing is now adjourned.